If you will grab your manuals, and we're going to just kind of go through this fairly quickly. I expect all of you can read pretty well. As John often says when he's preaching, he knows that people read the ridge lines in the magazine, and though we want to listen to preaching, I'm okay if you read through some of this while I'm talking, because I think we can multitask a little, so I'm not going to read it to you. But I am going to highlight a few areas. So to start out with, I always remind us of the purpose that we are here. And we are really here to, as you read that statement of our purpose statement, as we disciple children to become disciples of Christ that love God and serve people, I really emphasize the part that says we partner with parents. Now, many of you are parents here. And so, really, it's your responsibility to be discipling your own children. That's where the primary discipler is. And yet, as volunteers, we also want to partner with other parents to help them in that process. There are things that we can do corporately that you can't do at home, and there's things you can do at home that we can't do very well corporately. And so just remember that. A partnership is very important. And so every parent that comes through the door is important to us. And some of them don't know Christ. And so that's a little bit different situation, but we want to make sure that we're giving parents the attention they need, but we are in partnership with each other. And I want us to make sure we're thinking about it and thinking of it in that way. And so you can read through the vision part. It just kind of gives our distinctives as we reach out to children. If you want to go over to page 5, as volunteers, as we come in, I just want to highlight a few expectations we have of you guys. And this is really to help all the ministries to go smoothly. And first of all, to attend training meetings. And obviously you're here, so preaching to the choir here, but thank you for coming. We don't want training meetings to be boring. We want them to be efficient, but they're important. They're really to help us set up properly so that when we begin ministries, it's not as chaotic. I will never say it will never be chaotic, but those first few weeks can get crazy. So if we're well prepared, knowing some things in advance, that will really save us a lot of headaches once we get started. It's really helpful if you arrive early. This is always a difficult one, especially if you have your own kids, especially younger kids. Well, maybe not. Some I find teenagers are hard to drag out of the house in the right time. Maybe on Wednesday nights, if you're helping, you're coming from work. It's really hard to get here on time. However, a lot of times it's about how we kind of rearrange our priorities. So try to be here as close as you can to 15 minutes before. That really makes things go so much smoother. Sundays when we're transferring between two services, when we have our volunteers in the room, completely changes everything. If for some reason you come with your children and you can't get your children in, take them to the room that you're in. Go ahead and check in as a volunteer, and one of us, we will help you arrange that, and a lot of times we'll be communicating with you on that. But don't sit there and wait for the volunteer for your class to get there, because they may be waiting at your class to get their kids in. So I found if we just take our kids in, if we're volunteering, check in as a volunteer, and then we'll, once your second volunteer comes, then you can check your other kids in, and we can work that out. Sundays, Wednesday, it's not an issue. Sunday, sometimes classes close because we don't have enough volunteers in a certain room. Well, volunteer kids always get in. Okay? Volunteer kids always get in. So if for some reason that you're worried that that's going to happen, we'll get your kid into the class. So something just to remember. So arrive early. And this became an issue last year on Wednesday nights, is we don't want parents, actually, except for volunteer kids, parents checking their kids in until 10 minutes before. So it gives us just enough time to get our volunteers in. It's not much of a window, but if we're watching those times, it really works pretty smoothly. So just watch. Come prepared. If you have some things to prepare ahead of time, prepare. Another way is just to mentally prepare. One of the things that is very helpful, and this is really hard to do if you've got a van full of kids, but even when you pull into the parking lot, shut the engine off. Don't let anybody out. Say, everybody quiet. Let's just have a time of silent prayer. If you can get them silent long enough, even if it's 30 seconds. I don't know if you've ever had silence for 30 seconds. That was only 15 seconds, and it was already starting to, it's amazing what 30 seconds will do. So, you know what, things like that, I think just get into the habit of that. That will really help for you to mentally move yourself into investing into kids. Next thing is dress appropriately. Obviously, we have men and women in the room, and working with kids, we're bending down, we're doing all sorts of things. Dress really makes a difference. And gals, watch your tops especially. That can be very distracting for men, so as we work together, especially when we're in mix, just be careful of what you're wearing and dress appropriately, and remember, think about what other people see, and that's really helpful. It's always a hard conversation to have, but I really respect when people wear modest clothing when we're working with kids, because like I said, we're in all sorts of different positions with kids, and it can get kind of awkward at times. Be faithful with your attendance. Let us know if you can't make it as far ahead of time as you can. It's hard when it's 5 minutes before something starts. It's better when it's more than an hour or 2 hours, or if it's the night before. We know that you can't always control things, but let us know, even if it's at the last minute. Try to get a hold of whoever you need to let us know. Communicate with us and with parents, and we'll talk a little more about that in the future, or down the line here. And you know what? Bottom line is we're here to love the kids. As we plant these seeds of the gospel, that's the best thing you can do, is when, at the end of the day, when they walk out, that they know you care about them. And that's what they're going to remember. Next page, commitments that we have for you. We're going to continue to try to do the best training we can for you. And if you have ideas, we'll certainly listen to ideas, but we try to put the right stuff in your hands so that you can do your job the best. Remember, you're the one that's investing. It's really your job to connect with these kids, and we want to do what we can to help you do that. We pray for you often, and we want to do the best communication we have. A lot of emails, so read your emails. And if you have a question, respond by email, because we need to be reading our emails too, and we'll try to do that in a timely manner. And then we'll always want to keep the vision out in front of you. And middle and high school students, we're glad that you are here. You know what? We see you as just a part of the team. And some of you are in training, and adults, if you have a middle or high school student working with you, a lot of times by high school they've got it figured out. Sometimes the high schoolers are better than us at it. They're really good at it because they really know how to invest their time. But let's work together. I'm very big on teams, and let's think of ourselves as teams. And middle schoolers, don't be afraid to take some wisdom from an adult. And adults, don't be afraid to help kids learn how to invest in kids, because once that starts in middle school, by the time we've had people by the time they're 15, 16, like I said, they're as good as any adult, and they do great with kids. Kids love them. So let's work together on that with the middle and high school students. Okay, child safety, page 7 in your manual. We have a check-in system that we almost always use, except for very small gatherings. So ultimately, for this group, we will always be using this. You know what? I'm not going to go through everything. It has a picture of the end slip there. Just a couple things to remember and to highlight. Remember that we want to get the right kids connected with the right parents in the right classroom. So that picture, I know it's not always the best picture, but usually you can tell. Make sure you look at who the parent is that's checking them in and the child. Eventually you'll get to know the kids and the parents, and then you don't have to look as closely. But do make sure you begin to use that and look at that so that we're matching the kids up right. And also, this is something that's often forgotten. Look at the room. Sometimes a parent might bring a child to the wrong room. I've had to shift kids before because somehow they got into the wrong room. So I know it gets a little crazy at times, but just try to look at that picture of the kid and the parent, the room, and then the last thing, and this is something you can do once you get all the kids in there, make sure you look at any medical information or comments. If there's a special needs child, if there's an allergy, those are good things to know. Most of the time allergies don't matter, but if we don't like people to bring outside food in, but if somebody has a really severe peanut allergy and another child brought in some food and pulled it out, that could cause a reaction. So we just need to be aware of allergies. Know who your kids are, and that will be really helpful. As you bring these kids in, confidentiality is really important. That's on page 8. Mostly that's about if you've got some issues with the student and are going to talk to somebody else about it, just do it in the right atmosphere. We don't want to be talking about a student in front of the student if we were talking to a parent or in front of all the other parents. Just kind of respect that confidentiality. Also, your slips, do not throw them in the trash because we shred them all because we don't want pictures getting out, and don't take them home, okay? We can send them home with a parent, that's okay, then they can do whatever they want with them, but if it's in our possession, we either, we have places to put the in-slips and we have them shredded, so put them in those little baskets, don't throw them away, and don't take them home. If you need information off of them, we can get you that information. If there is a medical emergency or injuries, we have first aid kits in all the rooms. And if you have any questions, I mean, this is one of the places where if you need a doctor, you know, I mean, in our church you say if you're, you know, not a doctor or nurse, stand up, and, you know, there'll be 2 people stand up and then everybody. That's not true, but there's so many medical staff. We have never had that problem with being able to respond with doctors or nurses. So if there's a problem, let somebody know and we'll get the right type of people there to help out. But if you do have an incident, an injury, something that you think I'm going to have to talk to a parent about, then we want to make sure that we write it up. In every first aid box is a little incident injury report form. Most of the time we never have to do anything with them, but I err on the side of caution. If there's a bumped head, 2 kids smash each other in the head and there's a bump there, we're going to tell the parent about it, this is what happened. Just write it down and turn it in to probably with the in-slips, and then we'll get it so that we keep it on file. And the other last thing on this is we don't emphasize this as hard as we should, but a child wellness policy. If you have sick kids, don't bring them. As you know, anything public, we tend to spread a lot of germs around. And so if you got sick kids, even because you're volunteering, maybe if you've got 2 of you volunteering, 1 can stay home with the kids, let us know, but that happens. That's why we have subs, we'll work with it. We would rather not have sick kids come and spread everything around. And the other thing is a volunteer, if you notice somebody is sick, has a fever, we had some things where somebody had a rash and they, oh no, it's not chicken pox, but it was the hand and foot thing, and that was going around all summer long. And we don't want those kind of things to spread. And so if you have a question, say, you know what, would you go talk to Alan or one of the directors of the ministry to help make that decision, but we do not want sick kids coming in to the ministry because it will just make everybody else sick and maybe you sick too. So let's try to keep an eye on that, and that would be really helpful. Page 10, weather cancellation. We actually have a weather policy now, believe it or not. We have actually standardized what we're going to do for weather cancellations, and this goes for any program. Hopefully we'll be able to stick to it, but we're going to make decisions by 2.5 hours ahead. So if on a Wednesday night, which is 6:15, what is that, 4:30? You know, so we're 2.5 hour, actually it'd be 3:45. So 2.5 hours ahead of that, we're going to make a decision on whether we're going to cancel or not. That includes Sunday mornings, believe it or not. 2.5 hours is kind of our window. If we can do it earlier than that, we'll do it earlier than that, but that's the latest we're going to go. The information will be on the website, and we will put it on KTTC, Channel 10, or whatever that is on cable, and KAAL, which is Channel 6, and whatever that's on cable. But those are the 3 places we're going to put it. You're not going to hear it on the radio. There's too many other things to contact, but those 3 places are pretty easy to get to. We will have that information posted by then. Finally, we do have a fire evacuation plan, and in all the rooms there is maps like these that tell you where you need to go. And it's really pretty simple. Ultimately, all our kids end up out on the parking lot. We have if you've ever seen the yellow painted part of the parking lot, that's eventually where all our kids end up. But there are maps in all the rooms like this with arrows that tell you which rooms you're going to exit. And I'm not going to go through it all because we're all in different rooms. And that's for the main level, and this is for the upper level. And so a lot of it's common sense, and that's for fire. For tornado, I don't think we'll have a problem with that, but tornado ends up, probably somewhere in the lower level of the children's ministry room. But just kind of be aware of those maps in your rooms. That will tell you what you need to do. I'm not going to go through classroom management and the discipline stuff. I think you can read through that. I just want to touch real quickly on the child protection policies. And this is a document that we have just recently revised. We've revised it several times over the years. And, oops, we'll keep that like that. Several times over the years. And I am, again, not going to read through it. I'm going to highlight a few things. And really the bottom line for us is how do we responsibly deal with kids so that it protects them, protects us, and protects the church. We all know we're in a day and age of problems, and false allegations can be as damaging as actual allegations. And so what we want to do is be responsible in how we interact with kids. And there's some guidelines there about how you interact, that you should be careful with what's appropriate contact, what's inappropriate contact. And some of it's fairly simple, but inappropriate contact includes kissing, requesting or demanding hugs. Now that's one thing that it says it like that, but it's more of demanding hugs. I have kids all the time that I can't stop them from coming up and hugging me. I don't think that's wrong. I'm not going to, I don't think we need to be fear contact with kids. And so we want to keep that balance. So, Amy's right up front. I mean, I can't stop your kids from hugging me, can I? They love it. But let's just do it appropriately and don't make a kid hug you that doesn't want to hug you. That's really the bottom line. Or some kids, you touch them on the shoulder and they'll do that. Well, then don't touch them. Let's just be appropriate in the way. But you know what? Sometimes the most reassuring thing for a child is to put your hand on their shoulder, especially boys like that. Just a little bit of pressure and, hey, you're doing great, and an encouragement. And so deal with what's appropriate and inappropriate. And I think a lot of that's self-explanatory, and it explains it pretty well in here. The other thing is if you work with younger children and diapering and bathroom procedures, it's really good. Most of our bathrooms are open, but you really should, a lot of times we want to close those curtains. You really should only close them part way to hide the child, but you should be in view of another adult. And that's really the bottom line when it comes to protecting ours, is think about that 2-adult rule. With every group, we want to try to keep 2 adults visible with each other. Now, that doesn't mean you can't break kids up and be in different parts of the rooms. Sometimes for older kids, elementary, we'll put them in another room with an adult, but with older kids, with open rooms, a lot of times we leave a door open. We have open rooms, that's acceptable too, but we just want to have that line of sight so that you're not in a private area with either a small group of kids or alone. That's what we don't want. I once made a mistake during a VBS. I was talking to some kids about the gospel and it got really loud, and I asked a young girl to step into the room. And then after that I realized, ooh, that was the wrong thing. Actually, the parent called me on it and said, hey, my child said you did this. And it's like, you know what, I did the wrong thing. Now, there was no problems with that. That was a number of years ago, but I realized I shouldn't have done that. So we want to just be careful of having those private places. There's not a lot of places in this church to do that with, but don't let yourself be found in a private place alone with a child or a small group of children. And if you do that, that will really help. And that's that, we kind of bend it a little bit when it comes to bathroom procedures, so really watch that. If you're having kids go into the bathroom, you can stand there with the door open, you can stand outside the bathroom, you do not have to go in the bath. Well, you could go in, but there should be a second adult then in there with you so that you can see each other. Okay? So that's kind of what we want to make sure you do. The rest of this is just kind of reporting procedures and things like that, and some things that we have to follow. But if you keep contact with those 2 things, that will really help us and protect both you and the children that we work with. Okay, that's what I wanted to go through. Any questions on that before I move us to, I do have one other thing to say, but any questions on any of that that you want clarification on? And some of this we can do in our separate groups, but something that might be helpful. Do you have any questions? Wow, I'm that good. Woo! Okay. You do have a sheet that we sent you or gave you when you came in, and that's another requirement. We have now what's called a security and emergency response preparedness team. I'm a part of that, and we're trying to really look at the safety guidelines that we have here in the church and the safety of the church. And one of the things they've asked us to do, and I've agreed to that, is that every year we have to sign that we have read this. Now, if you filled out an application, if this is your first time, that's what you sign when you fill out an application, that you've read the guidelines and you'll adhere to them. But we want you to sign that now because we have to keep a copy of that on file and do that every year that you're here. So if you would make sure you sign that and then you can leave it on the desk as you go out, that would be really helpful.